Hi, students.
Would y'all like to see my soil mates? Do you know what they might be?
Worms. Yes.
Snakes? Not snakes. Worms. These are red wiggler worms. They can eat up to half of their own body weight a day. Could you eat half of your body weight in a day?
No.
Inside the soil, there's millions of very tiny animals that are called microorganisms. If they produce better plants for us, our big animals can eat better. And if they can eat better, they can produce better food for us.
They're 9 and 10 years old, and they're asking the questions that adults are asking. How does bad soil affect you? How does soil degrade? And can we make it healthy again?
When a cow eats, what happens afterwards? They poop. You know how many poo does a cow make per day? 100 pounds.
And sometimes the earthworms that we talked about earlier that I showed you, those worms are eating the cow poop and integrating it into the soil.
Yeah, the poop loop. We take care of what we love, but we love what we know, and we know what we have been taught.
Go make some soil. You could do it.
Our future through Earth's living grace.
Welcome, soulmates, to another very exciting episode of 6 Inches of Soul, the podcast. I'm joined once again by my superstar producer, Claire McKenzie. Hi, Claire.
I'm Rich. How are you? I think I've just seen, you've just sent me a photo of your beautiful lawn. What's going on in Nomo May?
Well, it's been Nomo January, February, March, April, May in my back garden, and we've got all sorts of weird and wonderful green things growing, which I didn't even know existed, that were just, I guess, lying in the seed bank waiting for the right conditions. So we've got things that are about 2 foot high, and we've got things that are about a couple of inches high, but lots of purples and yellows, and it's blue bonnet season here in Texas, which is, they're like a lupin and they're beautiful. And we sprinkled down a handful of them about 5 or 6 years ago, and they have just multiplied and multiplied. And so, yeah, it's definitely looking pretty wild. And I've taken on the advice from the previous gardening episode of Be Messy, probably to the extreme, and I'll post it and we'll see what listeners think about that. But how are you doing? What's going on in your world?
Well, Be Messy. I have very many corners of Be Messy. And then my lovely husband, who's very loyal and supportive, has, well, the biggest development in our lawn was that he likes to mow it. So we have, but I'm allowed areas where it's not mowed. But also I stopped him putting on any of that lawn improver about, well, a good, I don't know, after the first year he did it, and I literally was not very happy. So our lawn is full of dandelions at the moment. It is dandelion season here, and I love it. I love their heads. Very cool. But it's the most amazing time of year. And again, inspired by the last one. I think every time I go out, I see something different, or I'm like, why is that thistle there? And, you know, what are the different plants telling us? It's really powerful. There's a big campaign at the moment as well, following on from Pan's discussion with Nick about glyphosate. And it's particularly saying here it's Soil Association, and Riverford got behind it as well. And I presume, I think Pan, but it basically saying that they want the glyphosate not to be sprayed just before harvest. And so they're particularly citing that moment. So that's, I thought it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And there's been a lot of activity on that over here in the States. There's been a big win in government to block the chemical companies from people getting sick and then suing the chemical company for getting sick. And there was a bill going through government that would stop people from doing that, and that got squashed, which is really good news. So if chemical companies are doing bad things, they need to face the consequences, and that's what was put through. So that was a big win over here. Now, this week's episode is a special one. About 2 months ago, foolishly, my kids' school teacher, their STEM teacher, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths, allowed me into the classroom to talk soil to draw the connections between food and soil, and how is a pizza connected to soil, and where do all the ingredients come from, and ultimately that's soil, right? And we broke some eggs, some regenerative eggs, and the cheapest eggs we could find to look at the differences, and that was all really fun. And so I asked if I could come back with a special guest to do a live podcast recording in the classroom with the kids. What could possibly go wrong? So the guest in question was returning soil mate Andie Marsh, who's a dear friend of the pods, and she's been an amazing supporter. And she lives here in Austin, not too far from me. And so that was all exciting enough as it was. And about 24 hours before we were due to record, I get a phone call from a friend of mine down in Mexico, a guy called Daniel Coindreau, who is a huge rancher, and he grows vegetables, and he is well on his way down this regenerative journey of regreening his land, and a lot of land. 10,000 acres is the size of farm that he has. And he said, "Oh, Richard, I'm in Austin going to a cattle auction just to understand more about the cattle scene here. Do you want to meet for coffee?" And I said, "Is there any chance I could upgrade that coffee to be you sitting in a classroom answering questions from 10-year-old students?" And reluctantly, no, very, very energetically, he responded he would love to do that. So we had this unique situation where we had two huge experts in the soil world, both Andie from a kind of soil composting worm point of view, and then Daniel from a very practical, he raises cattle for meat, and he raises vegetables. He's also developing a really cool business with some of his rancher friends down in Mexico to allow consumers to tap into this, to buy the food from his and his friends' ranches, including Alejandro Carrillo, who was on our last episode about water. They're starting this business to allow consumers to choose to buy products from their farms. So really exciting. The other thing to note is that if you want an episode with lots of baby chicks chirping in the background for the whole episode, well, you're in luck, because the kids had an egg experiment, and they were incubating these eggs. The eggs hatched a few days before recording happened. So that's what's also going on in the background. I hope you enjoy. So without further ado, here is the episode recorded in school in grade 4 with a handful of kids and some guests and some cheapy chicks. Enjoy.
So you guys get your wiggles out, because we're gonna go live. We're gonna go live in a sec.
Well, let's get this going. Well, welcome listeners to a very special episode of 6 Inches of Soil, the podcast. We are joined by the students of grade 4 Mrs. Passey's STEM class. Hi, students. This is the first time we've done this, and we've also got lots of other special friends with us. So on my right, what's your name?
Oh, hi, I'm Daniel. I'm from Mexico, from the north part of Mexico, and I'm a rancher. I'm very happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, well, we're really excited to chat with you and learn from your experience. And on my left, I've got returning soilmate, Andie Marsh. Do you want to introduce yourself to the kids?
Yes, I'm Andie, and I live in Austin, just down the road, and I'm a soil specialist. I mostly look at soil and compost under a microscope and see what's living in it. So that's my specialty.
And you've brought some soilmates of your own today, haven't you?
I did. Would y'all like to see my soil mates?
Yeah.
They're in this bin. Do you know what they might be?
Worms.
Worms. Snakes? Not snakes. Worms.
Maybe not.
So I'm going to show you.
And whilst Andie's getting her worms out, you might also be able to pick out, I don't know if that's, you might also be able to hear the chicks that are in the background that, how recently did they hatch, Mrs. Passey?
They're 5 days old?
They're about 5 days old, and they're in the corner just giving us some beautiful ambience of actual bird life as Andie puts on her latex glove to
mostly for the food scraps. I'm not
Go
so
and
worried about the worms,
have a
but I'll
look
grab a
in.
handful of worms, and later maybe y'all can look into this bin. Basically, I have a bunch of food scraps in there from our kitchen, okay? And the worms have been digesting them. So this is an old banana peel, and I'm going to show you how there's worms feeding on it. Can you see the wormies?
Wow. Well, listeners, Andie's holding up a a black banana skin crawling with what kind of worms are they, Andy?
These are red wiggler worms. So they are very good at breaking down food. They're a type of earthworm. They can eat up to half of their own body weight a day. So imagine how much you weigh. Could you eat half of your body weight in a day?
No.
Probably not, but these guys are really good at breaking down food for that reason. Here's another handful. This is what's living underneath the banana peel. So I'm seeing lots of more wormies, and this is just the substrate that they're living in. So I built this bin with this material, created a little habitat for them, and then we just feed them the food scraps, and they're happy as can be.
Where did the soil come from?
Where did the soil come from, Andy?
The soil in here, this substrate, is actually based on cocoa coir and some of my mature compost. So that's
What's cocoa coir? What does that mean?
cocoa coir is a waste product from the coconut industry. So you know what a coconut looks like, right? Has that kind of hairy husk on the outside. That's a byproduct because we can't eat that. So if you harvest a coconut, you're just going to be taking what's inside, and then you have this husk on the outside, and we turn that into different kinds of products. One of them looks a lot like soil actually, but it's pretty sterile, meaning like it doesn't have a lot of life in it. But now that we have this in the worm bin, there's lots of microbial life and obviously the worm life. So that substrate is just a nice spongy consistency that they get.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I think before we start, we can talk a little bit about the why. Why are we here? A few weeks ago, Mrs. Passy was kind enough to let me loose on the kids in this classroom, and we looked at good soil and bad soil, and we've got examples of it on the desk here today. And we did what we call a slake test, where we put the clods of soil in water to look at how they reacted, and they were very different. We also broke some eggs and looked at that and explored the relationship between healthy soil and healthy food and degraded soil and food that's maybe not so healthy for you. So to get us started, we've got two students in front of us who have got questions. But first of all, introduce yourself. What's your name?
My name is Cal.
And what's your name?
My name is Rhea.
And how old are you guys?
I'm 10 and I'm 9.
9 and 10. Well, would you like to read your question, and we'll do our best to answer it?
So my question is, why do you guys care about soil so much? And my question is, and why is it so important to the world?
Okay, well, Andy, do you want to talk about why do you care about soil so much?
You know, I came to understand and care about soil because I first cared about my own health. I thought I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. The more I understood about what makes our own health good, I started realizing you kind of are what you eat, right? And you are what you eat eats. Meaning, if I eat meat, what is that cow eating or chicken eating? And then what is that plant getting? So it all kind of goes back to soil health. That's one reason that I really care about health, is because I care about human health. And what was the second part of that question?
And why is soil so important to our world?
Yeah, I think it's important for not only human health, but environmental health. So I'm sure we'll talk in more depth how it affects climate and habitat and the way that we get to experience our life on Earth.
Yeah, and how about you, Daniel? So you're a farmer, you're producing food, right? So presumably soil is really important.
It's very important. I became a farmer because I love animals. Do you guys like animals?
Yeah.
Okay. But most of us, we just see the animals that our eyes can see: the cows, the deer, the chickens, the birds. But I found out that inside the soil, there's millions of very, 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 very tiny animals that are called microorganisms. And those microorganisms, if we take care of them, they take care of us because they produce better plants for us. And if they produce better plants for us, our big animal we can see with our eyes, they can eat better. And if they can eat better, they can produce better food for us. So everything is a cycle. And that's why I became very interested in soil.
Yeah, and it's so important. And if you think about this podcast is called 6 Inches of Soul, and the reason for that is that top 6 inches, which is about this deep, is responsible for feeding the world. So if we look after that 6 inches of soil across the world, it doesn't matter where you are, then it means that we're going to have food for generations to come. So, yeah, thank you very much for your question.
Thank you guys.
So, our next question is from, what's your name?
Luann,
And how old are you, Luann?
10.
All right, Luann, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. So, how does bad soil affect us daily?
Okay, so in your world as a rancher, how does bad soil affect you daily?
Well, it's a very good question. Bad soil. What do you think is bad soil?
It's not healthy for people to eat from. It can make you have bad growth eventually.
Exactly. So a bad soil cannot produce grass. So if you have bad soil that it's bare, that nothing grows on it, then that part of the land will become hotter when the sun is in, and it won't produce grass. It doesn't produce grass. The animals won't be able to eat from it, and it won't help anyone. So yeah, so bad soil doesn't help anyone.
But Duran, if you remember when we came in a few weeks ago, here's the soil that we looked at. So this is the degraded soil from the field, which had lots of crops, same after one crop year after year after year, lots of tilling, turning the land upside down. And this is the good soil, which comes from behind my backyard. Just as a reminder of, do you remember that experiment we did when we put them in the water and the slake test and the degraded soil, as soon as it hit the water, just dissolved to nothing because it didn't have any pore space to hold water. And holding water is really critical. I mean, how much rainfall do you get where you are?
Not as much as you guys. I get like 10, 12 inches of rain per year.
So not very much, really. If you think about how much 10 inches is, it's about this much. So it's maybe a cup like this. And Daniel has to use this cup to grow all of his food and crops and cattle. So really,
Yeah,
cool.
and those 10 inches of rain that I get each year, if I have bad soil, you know how many those inches my land is gonna absorb? 0. If I have good soil, those 10 inches of rain, they will absorb everything, and I will get to use every last drop of rain. So if you have good soil, you can absorb the rainwater better. If you have bad soil, it can rain 100 inches, and you won't be able to use nothing. It will just wash away and end up the rivers. So it's important to have good soil.
And what about you, Andy? Why do you care about soil so much?
Well, I think for Luann's question on how bad soil affects us daily, there's so many ways that bad soil can affect us daily, but one that I think of that's most prevalent to where we are kind of in a more suburban kind of context is that bad soil in these areas and in our rural regions close by can break what's called the small water cycle. Have y'all ever learned about the water cycle in your science class? How water evaporates and turns into clouds, and then that's how we get rainfall, and it continues. Well, when you don't have any great soil to grow healthy plants, then there's a loss of part of that cycle because you require what's called evapotranspiration. That's where plants release some of the water inside of them to help form those clouds and create rainfall. So I think that's one of the most important things for this context and how bad soil affects us daily.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It just goes to show all of the different things that can be affected by soil, from water to healthy food. So great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.
Hey, what's your name?
Oliver,
Hi, Oliver. And how old are you, Oliver?
I'm 10.
Okay. And what's your question for our guest today?
How does soil degrade after time, and is it the weather?
Okay, so how does soil degrade over time, and is it the weather? Andy, do you want
Ooh, this is a big question. Did you know how big this question was when you wrote it? I feel like a big question.
Not really.
It's a big question. I'm actually going to answer it by thinking about how soil is first created. Okay, so here in North America, have you heard of the Great American Bison? Do you know what a buffalo is? Bison? And we used to have herds and herds of them across this landscape. And so they would graze the grass and then they would poop on the ground. And that is where the land became fertile over time with lots of animals doing that kind of activity. And then we put up fence lines and stopped the migrating bison. We also, in our history, have killed off a lot of those herds and the predators that would prey on them, keeping them in groups, right? So that was kind of the first thing that ever happened in our history before we ever took a plow to the ground and tilled it up, like Richard's probably told you guys about, was fence lines. Kind of broke the natural cycles of how soils were built over time. But then that put the onus on us to keep the soil fertile over time. So we ended up working towards these solutions that, frankly, make a normal looking plant on the ground, fertilizer, have heard of fertilizer?
Yeah.
And you can create a normal looking plant like that, but you're again kind of disrupting the normal natural cycles. Plants normally get their nutrients from microbes that we're talking about that live in the soil. There's actually a picture of one that I brought today. This is a bacterial nematode. So if you come up here, you can take a look at that. And so when this nematode preys on little bacteria living in the soil, it takes up the nutrients it needs, and then it will also poop out what it doesn't need. And that's actually a plant available nutrient. That's how plants have got all of the nutrients they needed for millennia for humans created fertilizer. Did anyone here know that?
Mhm.
Pretty cool, yeah?
Pretty cool.
Yeah, poop of animals.
Yeah, poop from animals is a natural fertilizer.
We call
Exactly.
it the poop loop.
The-
Yeah,
the
poop is
poop
good.
loop. I love that. And Daniel, uh, one of Oliver's questions, second half was, is it weather? So maybe talk a little bit. Well, in fact, before that, it might be fun for the kids to understand how much land do you farm? We're talking about soil and land.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my ranch. So imagine a football field. It's big, right?
Have you guys ever been to football, American football game here in Austin? Yeah, you've watched it on telly, so you know how big that is.
Well, my ranch is 10,000 football fields.
What? 1,000?
10,000 football fields. Imagine that.
Wow.
Wow.
And I have the responsibility to take care of that piece of land. And you know who's helping me? My cows. Those are my allies.
How many cows do you have?
Around 1,000 cows.
1,000 cows. Wow. So this stuff matters to you.
It does matter because, as Andy was saying, when a cow eats, what happens afterward? They poop. You know how many poo does a cow make per day? 100 pounds.
100 pounds. Wow.
And if you have a healthy soil, a healthy ranch, all of those 100 pounds will turn into soil.
And sometimes the earthworms that we talked about earlier that I showed you, those worms are eating the cow poop and integrating it into the soil. So that's how it breaks down and rebuilds the soil health and soil fertility.
And it's amazing when you look at a cow, at the poop of a cow, and in 2 days or 3 days, it's dirt. It became dirt because the big animals like birds and chickens move the poop. Then smaller animals like candies, worms, and beetles and bugs start disintegrating everything, and then the microbes they and they turn it into dirt. But what happens if you have an unhealthy soil? That poo will just dry out and it won't turn into dirt.
Yeah.
So it's a very important thing to have very healthy soil with all those microbial activity and all these animals, big, small, and super small animals, the ones you can't even see. All of that helps.
Yeah. The poop loop. And just quickly, the second part of your question, Oliver, was about the weather.
The weather.
And I think that's a big fact because the weather can find out your weaknesses really quickly. So if you're a farmer like Daniel here, with his many football fields of land, if it's a very hot, sunny day and he has exposed soil, that sun is going to beat down on the soil and kill all of these amazing microbes that live under the ground. Or if he has a big, heavy rainstorm, it can wash away the soil. He doesn't have enough plant life and healthy soil to absorb it. So
Yeah, the wind and the rain. If you have unhealthy soils, when it's very windy in my ranch and I see these tornadoes of dirt, that's my soil is getting away, and it goes away. Or when it's a heavy rain and there's bare land, like Rich is saying, you just see that beautiful soil just wash away, and it ends up in rivers. It ends up in the sea.
yeah, which
So
definitely,
have to take care of it.
yeah. So we've got a new guest in front of the microphone. What's your name?
I'm not.
And how old are you, not?
I'm 9 years old.
And what's your question today?
My question is, how hard can not treating soil correctly affect climate change?
So climate change, big topic.
Mhm.
Andy, what are your thoughts about soil and its relationship to climate change?
Yeah. So we've already been talking about how soil, in particular, can change the weather, right? So that has an effect on the climate if we're leaving soil bare at scale across the whole globe. Right, that can have a big effect across our whole climate. I'm not sure where I would go to give specifics of how that works. Do y'all have any suggestions on how we answer such a big climate related?
Well, I think one idea, we were lucky enough to speak to a NASA astronaut a few episodes ago, and he shared the perspective that from space, he was riding on the International Space Station, which goes around the globe, and from space, he could see sandstorms in the Sahara Desert in Africa. He could see that from space, and they would move the sand up in the atmosphere, and then it falls down on Houston as rain. And I just thought that was really interesting because from his perspective, you could see the Earth, the planet. I don't know if you guys have been following Artemis 2 on its voyage around the moon, and they're looking back from the moon to the Earth, and they see this beautiful marble that we all live on, and it's just one precious thing in space. And they've gone around the moon, and the moon really is dead. There's nothing. There's no life on the moon, and they can look back on this flourishing life of the planet. And what soil health can do for the planet is cause that water cycle that we talked about, just the poop loop. All of these things are really important to keep life going. And degrading soil, like this soil here, we're extracting the life out of it. It's getting worse and worse. Eventually, it'll be really hard to grow food from here, which we need to eat. Whereas if you have regenerative soil, like this one here, healthy soil, it's getting better, which encourages more life and more food, which in turn positively affects the water cycle and how much carbon dioxide you can't breathe that's in the air and how much oxygen is. So it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
So
And the next time you have a very hot day, a very sunny day, go where you have grass, touch it, and then touch it's just bare land, and you will see the difference in temperature. It's gonna be way more hotter where you do not have grass, and so that's very important for climate change. If we have our soil covered with grass and plants, we'll have a cooler plant. If it's just bare land, we'll have a hotter plant because
yeah,
all of that.
yeah. Good question, Knox. And now we're joined by another special guest. Who have we got here? What's your name?
Myra,
And how old are you, Myra?
I'm 9.
Okay, and what's your question?
How does bad soil affect healthy wildlife?
Okay, so maybe Daniel, you start with this. What kind of wildlife do you have on your ranch, and how does soil interact with it?
Well, we have a lot of wildlife in our ranch. We have hares and rabbits and javelinas and deer and pigs, wild pigs, and a lot of wild animals in the ranch. We recently saw for the first time um guajolotes. No Spanish.
Any Spanish speakers in the room? Kind of. What animal is that?
It's
You're not sure in English,
I
are you?
don't know in English. Turkeys.
Oh,
Wild
wow.
turkeys. They just came to the ranch. So if you have a healthy ranch, a healthy soil, new animals will arrive to the ranch. Because what do you think turkeys eat?
The soil.
And what's in the soil? The French for man?
The worm.
The worms
Ah.
and bugs and all of that. So if you have healthy soil, you will have more bugs and worms and stuff like that, and new animals will arrive to the ranch. So it's very important to have healthy soil for wildlife because everything is a cycle.
Mara, I'd add to that birds who fly, they can live wherever they want to live. They don't have fences. And I always think a good test when I go to visit a farm is if I'm completely still. I turn off the car engine, completely still, and with my ears, if I stop everything and I hear nothing, just silence, it's probably a good indication to me that the soil isn't great. Therefore, the wildlife there's not enough food, the ecosystem isn't thriving. Whereas if I go to an amazing farm like Daniel's, and if I turn off all the sound and listen, I bet I would hear lots of birds, I would hear turkeys, I'd hear cheeping chicks in the corner. But your ears can tell you a lot about where you are. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all talking about the food web. Have you ever heard of a food web or food chain? Yeah, you've got to have multiple layers to that to support more and more diverse life within one ecosystem. So I think they've done a great job explaining that. Thanks for the
Yeah.
question.
Good job, Myra.
Thanks, Myra.
Okay, and we are joined by two more special guests. So who have we got here? What's your names?
My name is Myra. My name is Walker.
And how old are you guys?
I'm 10 years old. And I'm 10.
Okay, and what is your question today?
Can bad soil turn good? And if it gets unhealthy, can it be fixed again?
Okay, so you're asking really about this whole idea of regenerating soil that's degraded like this, and can you turn it into healthy soil like this? So, Andie, what are some of the success stories that you
Yes, the answer is
know?
yes, you can turn bad soil into good, healthy, functional soil. Absolutely. And it comes down to what we call the soil health principles, right? So we have 6 of them, and I'm just going to tell them to you. One is to keep the ground covered, okay, with a plant of some kind, and ideally with a living root. So do you see how this sample that Richard brought has a bunch of roots in there?
Yeah.
And the other one doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference. So you want a living root because the plants are actually in relationship with all of this life in the soil. So it's called a symbiotic relationship, meaning the plants are actually feeding some of these microorganisms we've been talking about, and the microbes are in turn providing nutrients to the plants. Okay, so it's a
They're helping
partnership.
each other. That's what symbiotic means.
Yeah. And so let's see, we have maximizing photosynthesis, keeping a living root, covering the ground, minimizing disturbance. So can you think of any ways that we might disturb soil?
Maybe by like jumping up and down.
Jumping up and down? What about if you jumped up and down with like a tractor or an excavator, like a big piece of equipment?
Big digger, maybe.
Compaction.
And also like people walking on it using like harmful chemicals, fertilizers.
Yeah, very
That's
good.
a really good example.
Yeah, exactly. So the chemicals, they kill a lot of this life that we're talking about, the worms, the nematodes, all of the microbial life. So without that, it's really hard to grow plants and keep the ground covered. Okay, so yeah, I think we're talking about we've minimal disturbance, covering the ground, keeping a living root, biodiversity. That's another big one. So not just having one type of plant growing across that 10,000 football field span, but having lots of different types of plants growing in that space because it'll support a greater, more dynamic ecosystem. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Am I missing one? Context.
Yeah, the context. So it depends where you are. Like growing something that works where you are. So growing plants like the temperature where you are, like the rainfall. A lot of people want to grow plant and things that aren't really suited to. We're here in Austin, Texas, and if you try to grow something that's really more suitable for Seattle or maybe the Lake District in England, it's not going to work here. And you're going to cause problems for the ecosystem. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, so you can definitely turn bad soil into good soil. And then if it gets unhealthy again, that's our job to be paying attention to those things. Is the soil functioning the way that we want to? Are we keeping it covered? And if you start seeing signs, just like with your own health, if you start feeling sick, you'll know when there's signs, there's symptoms when your land is sick. And it's our job as land stewards to notice those things and do something about it.
Yeah, but you can always make it better. It doesn't matter what state the soil is in. If you use the principles that Andie talks about, like Daniel's doing on his farm, he can make it better and better. So that's that's a really good question. Okay. Yeah,
Hello.
thank you so much. Hi, what's your name?
Vela,
Hi Vela, how old are you?
I'm 9.
Okay, and what's your question today?
How long will it take for most of the soil to be good again if we try to work on areas that are not regenerative?
Okay, this is a good question. I mean, Daniel, on your ranch, how have you seen the speed at which you've been able to kind of regenerate your soils?
I think in every part of the world it's gonna be different because the amount of rain you get, the type of plants, or how bad was the soil before you start working on it. So it depends. But each part of the world will take different time, but the sooner we start, the better. So yeah, but each year, if you do the things correct, each year it will be a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we had a magic wand and we could heal all of the degraded soil across the whole globe all at once, I think it would be a pretty different world that we'd live in. I think we would have nicer weather, right? And we'd have a lot less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is part of the problem.
Mhm.
So we would be having a different conversation if we were able to do all of that in one fell swoop. But this is the reality is that we have to do it one farm at a time. We are just hoping to get the word out through podcasts like this and questions like yours to let people know it can be done in just like in some of the cases of the people I've been working with, they've been able to heal their soils in a matter of a year. They're really focused, right? And they have the context of, good rainfall, good weather on their side. But in other cases, it can take maybe 5, 10 years, depending. But if we all get started now across the globe, we could have a really beautiful work that we preserve.
And a big part of that is you guys deciding what food you want to buy when you go shopping. Because if you're buying food from ranches like Andie's working with and like Daniel's ranch, then you're helping tell those farmers, hey, this is a good thing. We like what you're doing. We're going to buy your milk, your eggs, your meat. So we can all help. That's a really good question. Thank you, Paula. Now we have a special guest now. What's your name?
My name's Tilly Tufton.
Oh, wait, are you related to anyone here?
Yes,
This is Tilly, my daughter. How old are you, Tilly?
I'm 10 years old.
Okay, and what's your question today?
My question is, how long is the longest root and how do you measure roots?
So yeah, let's talk about roots a little bit. Have you been measuring any of the roots on your farm, Daniel, to get a sense of?
It's for me that I'm soil expert. I mostly look from the soil up. So I look at different plants, and I know if I have a lot of different plants and grasses, all of them have different size of roots. So as long as I see diversity of plants, I'm happy because I know roots are all over the place. But maybe the soil expert can talk us about roots.
So I know here in North America, some of our perennial grasses, like the prairie grasses, thinking back to all those bison that were part of our history, they would feed on these perennial grasses that had root systems that were anywhere from 5 feet, so about probably some of y'all's height, down to 20 feet long.
Wow.
And that's a really long way, right? That could be the height, beyond the height of this room that these roots are going into the soil. And how do we know that? Any thoughts on how we might measure roots?
What do you think, not?
You could, one way to do it is you can try to you can maybe stick a stick into and if if it catches on something, is as if it catches on something, like when it's stuck on things would be the roots, then you would know how long it is.
Yeah, Knox is saying you maybe stick a stick into the soil all the way down and see if you can feel the roots. That could work. But what about if you very carefully plant? Do you think that would be another good way to have a look at the roots?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or I feel like what Max is saying too reminds me of a tool that we use in soil science called an auger. So it's like a probe, and there are ways to auger down pretty low and take a sample and see if you can find roots. And then there's laboratory testing to see what what type of plant that root might belong to. So that's another way of doing it. But the good old fashioned way that we still use today is digging a hole, a deep, deep hole, and taking a look at what the soil really looks like underground with just standing in a pit looking at it.
But one of the key principles that Andy mentioned earlier is having a living root in the soil all year round is really, really good for making the soil better. And so what Daniel will be doing a lot on his ranch is making sure that some of his grasses will have shallow roots, some will have very deep roots, and everything in between. You want to have as much diversity as possible, keep those roots living all year round. And whilst that's happening, the photosynthesis is working to pump all of this good energy back into the soil. So yeah, that was a good question, Tilly. And now we're joined by another special guest. What's your name?
Joy?
And how old are you, Joy?
9.
Okay, and what's your question, Joy?
So if you have a farm, how do you manage to get all the plants off the field when they're so big, and how do you reseed them quickly?
Okay. Do you have any crops on your Daniel?
No, it's just grasses and plants, but
Yeah.
with animals.
So I think, Joy, one of what you might be asking is about like wheat crops, which is what you harvest to make bread and pizza and food like that you enjoy. And what a lot of farmers do across the world is they have this machine called a combine harvester, which comes through and it cuts off the seeds of the wheat, which then get ground up to make flour, to make pizza. And most farmers at that point will then turn their land upside down and leave it as bare soil for a few months before they're ready to reseed. But what some really cool regenerative ranchers do is that they'll have some green things growing in the field so that when the combine harvester removes all of the seeds and the crops, there'll be green things growing behind it. And some extra good ranchers will then have flocks of animals like sheep or cattle, which will come behind and graze on the green things before the next year's crop is ready. So
Yeah, I think he nailed it. It's called a combine. It's a giant machine, like the biggest truck you could find, so you could walk underneath it. And that's how you harvest these plants in these huge swaths of land. And you use similar machines to spread seed, which is called cover crop seed. And the intention of the cover crop is not to harvest it for food, but mostly just to allow it that green cover to protect the soil.
yeah, good question, Joy. Okay, and we have another special guest here. What's your name?
My name's Will.
And how old are you, Will?
I am 9 years old.
9 years old. Okay, and what is your question?
When it comes to having livestock on our ranch and other agricultural ranches, how can livestock help land become more regenerative?
Okay, well, this question is tailor-made for the guest on my right, Mr. Daniel.
What do you think? What have we been talking about? How do you think livestock can help regenerate the land?
Probably having cows and having the native animals there so they can do their job and their parts. So cows, they would poop, and
Exactly.
The poop
then
loop.
The poop
and
loop.
then smaller animals would spread it around, and it'd go into the soil, and it'd be more soil.
You got it.
No further questions. You are
You
the
got it.
expert.
You had the question, you had the answer.
Yeah. And you, your parents, they have a ranch, is that right?
Yes.
And do you know how many football fields the ranch is, or how many acres?
I know how many acres it is. It's a little bit over 1,000.
1,000 acres. Okay. And so you have cows on the ranch, right?
We have bison, so.
Oh wow,
Beautiful.
That's really cool. Well, bison. I mean, Andy mentioned it before, but they were the original livestock here in North America, and they can do amazing work at regenerating soil. Because one thing they've got is on their hoofs, when they tread, they pick up grass seeds, and they're really good at spreading the seeds around all the land that they trample on. Right? I mean, they're a pretty special animal.
Have you ever observed the bison yourself?
Yes, I have.
What have you noticed about how
I've
new across
noticed they always stay together, and they, whenever they trot, they always pick up things.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like they spread around the soil and seeds pretty well.
Yeah,
So-
definitely. Have you ever seen one wallow? You know what that is? When they kind of roll around.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
them wallow.
They also get a lot of seeds stuck in their fur that way. And then when they go wallow somewhere else, they spread it around there. Yeah, very cool. Great observation.
And have you noticed anything about the soil on your land since you've been visiting?
Yeah, so I have seen, so one time we were digging up something and I saw the soil and it looked very healthy. It kind of looked like the regenerative soil that you have right there. And
Yeah. Have you ever smelled it? Because that's often a good way to tell. If you dig up soil that's unhealthy, smell it, and it smells. It's hard to describe. It smells a bit unpleasant. If you dig up healthy soil and you sniff it, you can smell kind of pleasant smells, I would say. Have you ever done that?
I've never smelled dirt.
Go smell the soil, Will. That's the advice.
Yeah.
But that's really good questions. Thank you so much. So who are we joined by now? What's your name?
I'm Isabella.
And what's your name?
And I'm Gina.
Okay, and how old are you guys?
I'm 10. I'm 9.
Okay, and what's your question today?
My question is, how do you take care of soil in the winter? And
Okay.
then my question is, and what plants keep it working in the right direction?
Okay. So wintertime.
Okay, so as I was telling the story about bisons a long time ago that started from Canada and they went away to Mexico, and the predators were following them and they were eating and moving the land. And so we have to do that in a ranch, but in a smaller scale. And how do you guys think we move the cows each day? Will,
If you guys have it like fences opening up the gates or putting them in booths.
So Will says opening up the fences and maybe putting them in
so
trailers.
we do it with electric fences, and we move them day 1,000 cows. We move them each day. So what's happening is when we move them where they were pasturing before, we let that piece of land rest, and if we let that piece of land rest, the grass will grow. And in the winter, coming back to your question, that grass will stay there and as a cover crop, and it will help the soil, and cows will eventually come back and eat them. But yes, the important thing for winter is to have grassed land where you have grass and it's just
And the grass is a little bit like what a duvet is when you're sleeping at nighttime. So in the winter, when you get cold at nighttime, the grass is like the duvet, keeping the soil warm. And one of Andy and my friends who has a ranch out in Fredericksburg called Rome Ranch, I've seen him do an experiment where he's taken the temperature of the soil in wintertime on bare soil, and it was freezing cold. It was solid. And then he goes on to his ranch, which has long native grasses, and the soil temperature was good. It was still warm and healthy. So that's the first question answered. And then the second question was specific plants to keep it working in the right direction. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah. I think specific plants are going, for me, is generally a plant that's built for the context. So we've been talking about how you want to plant that if it's the warm season, you want to be growing a warm season plant that likes warm season. It's a cold season plant, you want to be shooting a cold season, a plant that prefers that temperature. But as far as uh, you know, things that I think about when helping a farmer think about what kinds of plants they want to put out, I think about something called biomass, which means the size of the plant. Okay, because I want to think about how big are the root system below ground and how big is the above ground vegetation, because these are things that can really move the needle on their soil health. If as opposed to think about like a really low growing like clover's great because it's a nitrogen fixer, but have you ever seen like moss growing? Like it's really low to the ground, it has very little root system. Well, that's not going to regenerate soil quite at the rate that something like a large there's a cover crop mix that has like okra and sorghum and legumes, and so one has diversity. So I think as far as specific plants, diversity among those plants, and plants that have really great biomass that are going to help bring that carbon into the ground. So they do that through photosynthesis, right? Because have you learned about photosynthesis yet at this stage?
Yeah.
A little bit.
How plants take in light, they turn it into sugar. It's like magic. And then they actually release a lot of those sugars below ground. Why would they do that?
To feed the plant?
To feed their microbes. Remember? So the plants are taking the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and turning it into sugars, and not only to make up their own bodies, but to feed these guys. And so that's how the carbon ends up in the soil. And so if they have really big, leafy, above ground vegetation, they can photosynthesize a lot more sugar. And if they have really good, rich root systems, they're going to deposit that carbon sugar into the root zone.
And then in return, the microbes give delicious food back to the roots, which feeds the plant. So it's a really cool symbiotic relationship, which we mentioned before. So they're helping each other. Kate, what is your name?
My name is Milan.
Hey, Milan. And how old are you?
I'm 9.
Okay. And what's the question you're going to ask today?
My friend Ryder is moving to Japan. What is soil gonna be like there?
Wow. Japanese soil. Well, yeah, just quickly, I would say wherever you are in the world, soil is made up of 3 things: sand, silt, and clay. And wherever you are in the world, that's true. And they're all in just different percentages. So actually the soil in Japan, Australia, Africa, in England, here in North America, it's all going to be made of those 3 things. So that's one thing to
But
think
they'll be in
about.
different proportions to each other. So around here, where around your school, you probably have pretty shallow soils that I don't know. Are they clayey?
Yeah, it's quite tight against quite a the bedrock. It's quite shallow. Yeah,
Limestone bedrock, right? Then my section, it's even more clay in that ratio of sand, silt, and clay. But then if you go South Texas, you get a lot sandier types of soil. Now in Japan's really interesting because it's an island that was created through volcanoes, right? So volcanoes can actually produce a lot of fertility for the valleys. So usually in the highlands of a place like Japan, you'll have really infertile soils because there's a lot of weathering that happens in those mountains. But all of those sand, silt, and clays actually end up in the valleys. And the volcanic ash is actually like a really carbon-rich source material, and it all ends up in the valleys, which can be really fertile. The other thing that's interesting about Japan and cultures that come from island-based countries is that you have to get creative because you're constrained. So here in North America, where we have lots and lots of land, throughout our history, if we've depleted a plot of land, people have just moved on to the next plot because there was so much land to move on to. But in Japan, where it's a really tiny island, you don't have that luxury to just keep moving on to the next plot of land. So you really have to take responsibility to preserve the land that you've got. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I never knew you'd be a Japanese soil expert. I love that you answered that question. Thank you so much. It was a really good question. Hopefully Ryder gets to hear this episode so he can learn. Now we've got our last two students here. So who do we have? What's your name?
Scarlet. And my name's Adeline.
Okay, and how old are you guys?
I'm 10. And I'm also 10.
Okay, and what questions do you have today?
How do I take care of the soil at my home?
And how can I protect it in my everyday life?
Okay, so soil at home. What do you think,
Yeah.
Andy?
I think soil at home, really just interacting with it. So gardening, paying attention to what's living in there, starting a composting practice. So the worms are one way to compost.
Composting is a really good way. So think about what you're doing with your food waste. So when you eat a banana at home, what do you do with the banana peel? Maybe start saving it, and then you can mix it with some dead leaves and keep it in a little corner in your garden, and that turns into compost, which will feed the worms.
Yeah, that's my favorite way to participate in soil stewardship, is to be responsible for my own food waste at home and compost it, because it turns into a really rich soil amendment that you can use in a garden. I think that's the best way to get started at home.
Yeah, and protecting it. I mean, how do you compost your land? I mean, you've got 10,000 football fields. That's a lot of banana peels.
Yeah, naturally, but yeah, and don't worry in your gardens about seeing different kinds of grasses and plants, because in some gardens we all want to see a beautiful garden with the same grass. Don't worry, you have different kinds of grasses and plants. That's good.
Yeah, be messy. Be messy is really good advice. And the final piece of advice to answer your question is try to cover bare soil. If your parents have any bare soil in their garden, try to encourage them. You can put mulch down, which is something you can buy from the garden centre to put on top of the bare soil. But we really want to try to cut out the bare soil. So that's the other piece. And now for our last and final very special guest, we've got Mrs. Passy herself, STEM teacher extraordinaire. What is your question?
My question, I guess, is just for the teachers out there in the world, and how, as a teacher, teach kids a lot about how to keep our earth and how to keep our land in a way that we want to sustain it for their children and their children, and going on like that, and thinking about, just like you've talked about photosynthesis, you talked about the space and the environment outside and climate change. It's like, what kinds of things do you think that I could do as a teacher to encourage this, continuing in my classroom and in other people's classrooms?
I think the first and foremost is just regarding and talking about soil as a living ecosystem, because that took me over 20 years to figure out for something that actually showed me that. And I think if we can learn really at a really young age that soil is something that ought to be respected as like a living ecosystem that we depend on, I think that can really change how we relate to it in over time in our adult life.
Love that.
Yeah, and I think with the technology that we have right now, we can know more stuff. And there's a saying in my family that it's not from my family, I think it's from Africa, that it says that we take care of what we love, but we love what we know, and we know what we have been taught. So right now, guys, you have been taught something, and now you know it, and now you can take care of it, and now you can love it. So, yeah.
Love that, because again, wanting them to love the land and wanting them to be able to take that back through their whole life. And also I've seen so much through just using the examples you've shown us in our class, Richard, with the slate test, and letting them see it firsthand and experience it. And, with their eyes, they learn so much, just as much as they do with just being able to be out in nature and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'd love us to have a worm farm at our school. I think that being able to take the banana peels that they have during snack time, because we have lots of fruit during snack time, being able to take those things and to look at them going back into the land, because we built this school recently, and there's so many rocks all over the land. And they have found lots of geodes and lots of really cool things, but the land, when it rains, they can't play outside
Yeah.
because it's just dirt. And it's not healthy.
Yeah, it's not. I think the last thing just to think about is to constantly remind your kids, like each and every one of them can make a difference. When you go to a grocery store, when you decide what milk to buy, what bread, what butter, what vegetables, you're sending a signal to the world to say, hey, I really like the way this is farmed and this is coming from a regenerative source. And so I think a lot when you start talking about these big issues like climate change, you think, well, I can't make a difference. Wrong. You can. Every single person in here can make a difference in how the world is formed and what the future looks like. Just quickly before I go, I've got one question which I get asked a lot, especially from Mrs. Passy yesterday. If you're buying soil from your garden because you're inspired by this and you want to start growing things, what kind of soil should you be buying? And
Can I say a specific brand?
absolutely, yeah.
I think I know what brand. Does it have something to do with the frog?
Yeah, Happy Frog.
Yeah, there's a Texas brand called Happy Frog. And why is that good soil to buy?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when I first was learning how to use the microscope and to train my eye to identify all these microbes we were talking about, I was having a really hard time when I would dig around where I was living in Southeast Austin, or when I would go buy a bag of topsoil from the big box stores. I wasn't seeing much in there, much life. But then when I got Happy Frog and I put that under the microscope, it was very vibrant, lots of diversity of life. And I've since used it in a lot of gardening projects, specifically their soil conditioner.
Mhm.
It also has things like biochar in it, which help build soil structure. So that's definitely my
That's in our terrariums right here in the
Awesome.
classroom. So we definitely have the Happy Frog.
Well,
Yeah,
I know
excited.
it's almost time for recess and we've
Yes.
got wriggly worms, wriggly kids, but final thoughts, Daniel?
Well, final thoughts from my part. In Mexico, we have a brand of meat that we started that it's called Tierra de Todos. You know what tierra means in Spanish?
Land, right?
Tierra.
Land?
It has three meanings. Land. Tierra also means Earth, planet Earth, and tierra also means soil. And todos, you know what todos means? All, everyone. So the soil, the land, the planet Earth is for everyone.
Yeah.
So have to take care of it.
Amazing. That's such lovely final thoughts. Andy, anything you wish to add?
I think my parting words are go make some soil. You can do it. You can compost. That's creating soil, and then put that compost up on a little patch of land. You'd like to steward, maybe put a plant in the ground. You can do this. You're part of the solution. So thanks for
Absolutely.
bringing up this.
And just finally, thank you so much for having us here. It's been a real treat, real privilege. Love the land. Remember the poop loop and give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Woo!
Well, soil mates, thank you so much for listening to the episode. We are joined in this outro by a very special guest. What's your name, special guest?
Hi there, my name is Amy Arnold. I'm head teacher at Barnum Primary School.
And also we're joined by superstar producer Claire McKenzie. Hi, Claire.
I mean, the title is so hilarious, isn't it? Every time. So Rich is looking glorious in his full 6 inches of soil. I have my small badge and cow on, and it's amazing to see Amy, who I haven't seen her for a while. So yeah, really excited you're here today, Amy.
So Amy, tell the listeners, what is your connection with soil and why are you our chosen special guest for the outro for this episode?
My connection with soil is I'm head teacher of a primary school in the UK, and our primary school really places that emphasis on children learning about food, farming and sustainability. And obviously soil is absolutely key to all of those things.
Yeah, you've listened to the episode. I wanted to ask you specifically that last question, which Mrs. Passy, the STEM teacher who allowed us into the classroom, asked. And she wanted to know, how do we keep our earth, our land, our soil for future generations? But particularly as a message for teachers wanting to help teach the students, what can teachers do in their classrooms to help with this?
I think there's a myriad of different things teachers can do, but I think number one, they need to develop their own confidence. There's no magic to finding out about soil. And there are so many resources and organisations out there that are so willing to help teachers to inspire the next generation. So for teachers to increase their confidence, to really reach out to different organisations, to take part in some training, to invite experts into the classroom, it virtually is wonderful. The wonders of technology now, we can have experts zooming into the classroom to share their knowledge, which then teachers can expand and grow, link into the curriculums that are relevant for the year groups they're teaching.
Yeah, I mean, what are some of the specific things that you've done in your school?
Oh
that
gosh,
work?
I don't really know where to start. So at Barnum, we're really, really hands-on, because the children can't learn about the soil unless they truly understand it and they can explore it, and they can investigate it under microscopes, up close, different types of soil. So I think starting from our youngest children, we explore different types of soil. So we may be looking at soil in a woodland that's got a real high level of organic material, and we'll be looking and identifying features of that soil and maybe comparing it to the soil on our own school playing field and looking at similarities and differences. Then just some very, very simple investigations, planting something as obvious as sunflowers and looking at, do they respond differently to the different soil types? Does the increased organic matter give earlier growth, give stronger growth? Looking at that from our early years. And as we move through the school, our children get a bit older. We've been experimenting in some of our test beds. We've been enhancing the soil with sheep's wool. So we've got one test bed with sheep's wool. We've planted carrots. The next test bed we've enhanced with digestate, so that chopped maize, which links to some prior learning with solids, liquids, gases, anaerobic digestion. And then plain soil, and then really looking at what's the effects of enhancing the soil. Are the effects in the quantity of carrots? Is it in the size of the carrots? And then making their own comparison and why. And finding out that actually the sheep's wool is really high in nitrogen, but the sheep eat the grass, which is high in nitrogen. So it's really trying to make those cyclical links for the children to see the real world and the real impact of making our soil even healthier and what the impacts that has on our food. Today is Wednesday, and it's Worm Wednesday here at Barnum. So
Yes,
every
my
Wednesday,
favourite day of the week.
yeah, absolutely favourite day of the week. We collect all of the waste from school lunches, staff room tea bags, banana peels, and they feed our wormeries. Every Wednesday is Worm Wednesday, and we absolutely love our wormeries.
So tell us more about a wormery. If I was to see a wormery, what would I be looking at?
What would you be looking at? So we've got different layers in the wormery. So the top will look like lots of food waste that is alive with worms. Not on the top, not visually, but if you were just to turn over, maybe some tea bags, maybe some apple cores, if you were to turn them over, you would see lots and lots and lots of very red, healthy tiger worms. They're the type of worms we have in there. At the moment, you'd see lots and lots of, they look like cotton thread, little worms on the roof of the wormery, because we can see that they are very
And does
healthy.
it have like a perspex side so you can see in, or how do the
It
kids?
doesn't have a perspex size. It has 3 different layers because we know that they really, really like the dark.
Okay.
And yeah, we like to lift off the layers so we can look in. So the top layer would be food. The second layer would be more of their sort of habitat, their bedding. Then we've got that really, really, really rich worm waste at the bottom, which enhances our beds. And then there's a little tap, so we call it the liquid gold. So what comes out, so then we concentrate that down or dilute that down, and then we can use that for some of our plants, our veg patches.
That is wonderful. Well, Worm Wednesdays has to catch on as a thing. You heard it here first. So what about the episode itself? You've listened to it. What were your thoughts and feelings of the grade 4 students that we were lucky enough to chat with?
I think number one, every classroom needs cheeping chicks in the background. I think that created such a lovely ambience in there. I think just having those different people with you in the classroom really shows the careers that you can have in soil-based education and learning. Having the soil specialist, having the ranger instantly opens up some possibilities for the children. Just their gasps, hearing their gasps when they were seeing worms. We were just talking about worms. So hearing their gasps when they could see the worms, that natural curiosity, that desire to want to know more and to find out more, I think was sort of spoke volumes for their level of interest. I really liked that it built upon their prior experience when you went in, Richard, and looking at the good soil, bad soil, to use their terminology. You could see that by having that prior experience, it's triggered lots of questions, lots of curiosity. And what I was struck by was they're 9 and 10 years old, and they're asking the questions that adults are asking. They're asking the questions that we're hearing at different events, that we're hearing at different places, that adults within the food industry and the farming industry, they're asking, how does bad soil affect you? How does soil degrade, and can we make it healthy again? Can we regenerate that soil? And I think I was really struck by how much they're understanding the cycle of things. They're really starting to see that how can healthy soil affect climate change? How can healthy soil affect wildlife? They're bringing everything together as a whole, as a cycle. And I would say they've probably done some prior learning on the water cycle. And you could see how they were then bringing their knowledge, their rich and new knowledge of soil and the impact that has on the water cycle, and which is their everyday lives, seeing how it affects every single part of their lives, from the weather to the food they eat, how they feel. I think that was really stood out.
Yeah, well, thanks for noticing that. I thought the same way. It's really lovely we try on this podcast to bring in the voices of children, because I think it's a really good way to have experts who are always our guests are experts, right? And to have them break down their knowledge into a way that's easily understandable. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I mean, I was sat next to two people who've been in this soil world for a long time, yet they found a really nice way to kind of engage with the children. The other thing which I'll say is, after I went into the classroom the first time and showed them all the different types of soil, and we broke some different types of eggs together, it was 2 days later, I was in a pickup waiting to pick up my kid, and one of the other parents came up to me and said, "Oh, I don't know what you said to my child, but this weekend she was asking me what type of milk we were putting on our cereal and was it regenerative or not?" And then we had to go to the store and buy special regenerative milk. And she was asking all these questions which she'd never asked before. And I was really pleased with that, because it was just, getting that engagement. I'm sure we'd all be surprised with how many children think milk comes from a bottle in the supermarket, and just having that whole connection and knowledge loop. I really enjoyed that. What about you, Claire? What did you notice from the episode, and what do you think about it?
Well, I kind of really just wanted to ask you a question. I was so enthralled that I've got kids at school. I've been in once with 6 inches of soil, and personally, Amy, I'd take my hat off to you because I find it really terrifying. I'd much rather speak to a bunch of grown-ups, because we've done it with some shorts we produced, and Amy and I have been working on this soil ed project. The kids they just get right down to it, don't they, Rich? So I don't know how you feel. They ask like those very direct questions that sometimes adults don't do.
Totally.
So I love that you had all of that. So although, Amy, you're saying adults will ask, I think sometimes adults don't. I think the kids are asking the questions that adults want to ask, and that's why I loved what you did, Rich. So I kind of, did you do it because you were invited by the teacher, or did you invite yourself? What would you suggest to all of us if we want to do more at our school as well?
Yeah, I was partially invited and partially I talk to everybody all the time about soil, and it's really annoying. And so eventually one of the teachers was like, well, why don't you come in and put some of that enthusiasm to the children? I think you're right that children don't have the inner monologue that we develop as adults. And so they think something, they say it. And that was really interesting. It was definitely pretty nerve-wracking. I mean, in my 25-year career, I've done some quite high profile sales pitches concerning big business, and that was nervous, but I was feeling definitely much more nervous because I didn't know what to expect. It was really engaging. And I think part of it as well was that they have a teacher who's really interested to bring in external sources, STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths. It's all about bringing people from those type of careers. And they do have a little program where parents come in and talk about their careers. So it was teacher driven. But I would say to teachers out there, all of this stuff is so possible that wherever you're listening to this, there will be experts, either farmers or soil people or composters, who I know would love to lend their time to talk to children. It was extremely fulfilling to do it. But I think it was a combination of the teacher wanting to teach the best classes that she could and make it really interactive.
My other question was on Amy, and for both of you, really. We have found when we filmed 6 Inches Soil, then recently Colin and I've been producing some shorts that, because there was demand for it, because the film of an hour and a half is too long. And what we're finding is that sometimes the kids have more knowledge than the teachers and the parents, and therefore the poor teachers trying to teach a subject, if they don't have that knowledge and confidence already, it's not going to seem as natural. And I was just wondering, any top tips out there, again, for teaching professions, from Amy, what you've learned, and Richard, perhaps what you observed while you were there?
You go first, Amy.
I'd say start small. Start with something that you can find out about, that you do know about. And it would be no different if we were teaching, I don't know, equivalent fractions. We might not have that knowledge that we can just instantly draw upon. If it's something that we haven't taught for a long time, or it's a year group that we're not familiar with that curriculum, we would upskill ourselves beforehand. So this would be exactly the same. We'd upskill ourselves beforehand. We'd make sure we knew the basics of what we were teaching, and start small with something as simple as a wormery. A wormery in the school can cover every single year group and can go as low and high as we need. Have an expert to reach out to, someone that you can drop an email, pick up the telephone to. Today, there is a wealth of information at our fingertips. So just finding those right places to do a bit of research beforehand and draw upon those children that may know more. Why do they know more? Is it their parents? Is it, do they work? Do they have a hobby and interest? How do they know more and share their knowledge? I think we share our expertise, and teaching has shifted from we facilitate learning. We may not know absolutely everything about every topic, every area, but my goodness, we facilitate it, and we find those people who can help us to learn in lots and lots of different ways on lots of different things. And I think that was quite key, actually, in the episode. You know, the language those children are using and that they're beginning to understand, it starts young. So they're using language like tilling, nematodes, symbiotic, but we're putting that into a context, and then over time, lots of repetition, that will create a long-term connection, and that will last.
Yeah. And I think obviously sprinkle in some enthusiasm and passion and make it as engaging as possible. Like when I went in there for the first time, I didn't start talking about soil. I started talking about pizza. And obviously, like, who likes pizza? And all the kids stuck their hands up. And then, you know, connecting, how's that pizza connected to the soil? Well, of course, the dough is made from flour, which comes from wheat, which is grown in a field, which comes from soil. The tomatoes come from soil. The cheese comes from milk, which comes from a cow, which eats grass, which comes from soil. You know, those kind of help them get from their current situation to the situation you want to get them to.
Amy, you alluded to a few organisations. I will create some for listeners. Our show notes will be packed full of, and if it's not the show notes, we're also created some short videos I alluded to, and in there we are creating this very extensive teacher pack, but also with a lot of resources and places for people to go and explore. But I was wondering if you could tell us which organisations. Is it something like Twinkle? Where do you go for teachers?
So for teachers, we've got the Countryside Classroom, really, really good. Touch of a fingertip, lots and lots of information, lots of different year groups. Leaf provide a huge amount of resources, and they will also FaceTime a farmer. So you can have that farmer coming into your classroom. They can show you the soil. They can look at different soil types. yes, if they can't visit in person, but it can be virtually. And then you can get a different link. You can look at the different seasons with that same farmer, so you can work through those natural cycles of the seasons. You can get a good link. They're probably my main two. The Harmony Project do some beautiful resources that are linked to nature, the natural world, growing, very much protecting our planet. And just thinking, Richard, you were just saying like the linking with the food is absolutely key. With, you know, that everything links to food, but for children, you've got that natural winner. You've got poo. That is what they love. Poop, the poop loop. That's your hook.
That
Everything
is the
goes
hook.
back to poo, and they love that. They
Yeah.
love that almost that toilet humor, but using it to really get the
Yeah.
understanding of it is the natural fertilizer, and how can we encourage that, and what impact does that have on the soil, and then everything else.
Yeah, the poop loop was definitely the climax of the episode for sure. And Claire and Amy, you mentioned soil ed, which our listeners may or may not know what that is. So do you want to give it a bit of background as to what that is, just to help people learn about it?
Well, I'll give a sort of, and Amy's one of the practitioners whose work we've been highlighting. So Olivia Shave, who was part of our 6 Inches Soil team, led on a petition to embed food farming and sustainability into the educational curriculum, so it becomes a natural thing. Not so, and one person in the UK, many, but is Amy, we know, has done this, and so Olivia met Amy locally. They live near each other, and Amy features in the Soil Ed video, which is on the website. So Olivia is doing so much campaigning around this, and she's talking to MPs, etc., and just really trying to make this the norm, because there are lots of wonderful country trusts and everyone do lots and lots of school visits to farms. And alongside all of these people, the campaign is to say, let's just have it more like Amy has it, have it as natural. Let's bring maths alive through learning these topics. Let's even, I've seen it at Hackney School of Food. The chef taught a whole lesson, and we went outside as well. The kids, they did Spanish, they did English, they did maths, the whole thing. And it's trying to get people to think along those lines, because as you guys have said, the poop loop and the pizza, you could embed that in the cross. I've done it with, when you're trying to teach maths and you start weighing up things or whatever. So that the essence of it is Olivia personally is working very, very hard on it, and we've all been there supporting her. But Amy is one of those people that Olivia's wanting to tell the stories of what is going out there to inspire other teachers, but also to tell the education department educational plans. But that these wonderful teachers are leading the way alongside farmers, because Amy works with a farm. But anyway, I'll let Amy expand.
Yeah, no, I think you've summed that up beautifully, Claire. So it's giving every child in every school in England that opportunity to learn about food farming and sustainability, and that it's not just one year group where maybe rocks and soils features and they have a quick look at rocks and soils, but actually looking at our food system as a whole and understanding where does our food come from, and how can we make choices about the different foods we eat by having that informed understanding of where they come from. And really, I think branching out and trying new things. Certainly we do lots of things here where the children are involved in cooking their own things. We've fairly recently visited an organic farm, and the children were only talking about this morning, and it was 4 months ago we visited, so it's still resonating with them. We looked at the wheat that was grown there, and then that was turned into the flour, and then they made their own sourdough pizzas, and they absolutely loved it. They were involved in every part of shaping the dough, kneading the dough, all of the toppings, choosing the toppings, popping them in the oven. But they saw the journey from the wheat, the field, the grain, the flour, the sourdough, their delicious pizza. And there wasn't a single child in there that didn't absolutely devour their pizza. But they felt that real ownership because they understood the story of the food, and the care that had gone in every step of the way to produce their pizza.
Amy,
so Soil Ed is working hard. Olivia is working very hard behind the scenes to to sort of have that equity of provision for every child to understand the food system.
Amy, was that farm Shimpling Park Farm?
It was Shimpling Park Farm. So it was Alice Pawsey that we did a visit to a while ago. We work with our local farm. We've got a partnership. We've worked for 10 years together in partnership, and we now co-own a passenger trailer. Well, it's been probably about 9 years, so that our children can have access and go straight out into the fields. They harvest carrots, potatoes. They see firsthand how they're grown. They look at the wildflower margins. They carry out analysis of data of different types of insects. They're out capturing the different bird song and comparing, was there more or less bird song to a visit in the autumn to in the spring. So it's sort of using that to extend our classroom beyond our four walls at school.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Amy, on behalf of children and parents everywhere, thank you for all of the work you do to get the kids educated and connected to this whole world of soil and earth and food that we live in. Thank you for being a guest on the outro of the podcast. And yeah, listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to be the first to listen to new episodes. And until next time, soulmates, it's goodbye from all of us.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy.
In 6 inches of soil, our world comes alive. A podcast of passion where all souls thrive. Soil mates unite in a bold common chase, building our future through Earth's living grace.